So, my dear students, hope you are doing well and keeping yourself very safe. Today, I am going to discuss about the importance of water in a biological life. So, biological life exists in the cell as a unit of life, and our body is made up of, as you have gone through the initial lectures, different minerals and molecules. They are organized to different groups, and the groups are ultimately organized into macromolecules, then complex macromolecules. They are organized into subcellular organelles, and the cell is ultimately function as a unit of life. And the life is nothing but several reactions having certain fixed properties. They are very much controlled, harmonious, balanced, and having other different properties. These reactions are going on in a specialized environment within the environment. That you have already understood. Now, the most important part of the life ingredient is water. 60 to 70% of the body weight is due to water. So, water content in our body is huge. Inside the cell, lot of water. Outside the cell, also lot of water, extracellular fluids, intracellular fluids. So, our whole cells are actually submerged in water. The cell organelles are submerged in water. Why? Why water is so much important? Why we consider water as life? জলের আরেক নাম জীবন তোমরা সবাই জানো। কেন জল কোথায় আছে এটা খোঁজার জন্য মহাকাশে আমরা তন্ন তন্ন করে খুঁজে বেড়াচ্ছি বিভিন্ন গ্রহে। যেখানে জল আছে সেখানে জীবন আছে। কেন? এই প্রশ্নটার আজকে খানিকটা উত্তর খোঁজার আমরা চেষ্টা করব। Next please. So what is the importance of water? Now understanding, I have told you, the understanding of the properties of water important for understanding everything in biochemistry. Why? Because water plays important role as number one, gives rise to polar environment. The environment which was specialized environment in a cell provided by the water. Why? Why water is so important? What is the importance of water? It helps to organize the structures of biomolecules like membranes, membrane lipids, lipid bilayer, like proteins, from amino acids to protein. So, how the water helps in organizing the structure we will go through. Next, water interaction gives rise to several covalent and non-covalent forces. That means water is the key to develop certain forces, different non-covalent forces, that hydrogen bond, hydrophobic interaction, van der Waals forces, as well as ionic interaction. These non-covalent forces are very important in our body, in our whole cell, in the whole biomolecules, for interaction among themselves, for organization among themselves. So that is very important, as well as some covalent bond, which are nothing when you consider water is the reactant and product of that particular reaction, like peptide bond. Formation of peptide bond is due to loss of a water, or the peptide hydrolysis when there is addition of water. So water forms many chemical forces to make the biomolecular interactions possible and organize the structures. We will see with examples. Next, it is an excellent nucleophilic molecule. Nucleophilic, that means water when dissociate, H plus OH minus, and this OH minus is a nucleophilic which attacks the another atom, mainly the nucleus. So nucleophilic, nucleus which is positive. So nucleophilic, that means water can attack and they can dissociate the molecular attractions between the other molecules. So the reactions become much easier for the enzyme, for the other molecules to enter into that particular area and make some other type of bonds and structures. Because it has a high dielectric constant, it reduces the force of attraction of many biomolecules. Thereby, water can almost dissolve anything. Water can percolate inside the molecule as well as outside the molecule. So anything can be dissolved in a water. So water serves as a universal solvent in our cellular life, which is always required to be dissolved as well as interacted to each other. And also it serves as an excellent vehicle for transport. So all the cellular life depends on the different intracellular and extracellular transport. And that transport is definitely based on the water as a vehicle. So water being the polar molecule, it can helps in doing all these reactions, and also it helps to maintain the temperature. The body temperature is maintained by the water, the pH as well as the electrolyte distribution. So water plays almost everything needed for a cell to survive, to cell to build up and cell to interact. Next please. So I have told you just how water helps in formation of the covalent bond. Here is some covalent bond which is very much common in our biology. The covalent bonds are strong enough to hold macromolecules chain together to preserve the sequence of subunits for long period of time. One kind of nonpolar covalent bond is very significant in macromolecules is called peptide bond. That you will understand much more when you study the structure of protein. The two amino acids are united together by the peptide bond, and then one amino acid joined to another, so peptide ultimately polypeptide, and they ultimately folded into protein, which is a three-dimensional structure. Now glycosidic bonds is another one where you will find to build up the carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. Everything is built by these glycosidic bonds. That is also due to loss of some water. Water helps here as a reactant and product. Next please. These are the different non-covalent bonds I was telling. Like hydrophobic effect. I will go into more detail about it. Hydrophobic effect. What do you understand about the hydrophobic interactions? That you have to understand, then you will find the importance of the water environment. That is, I am going to explain in our next slide. Now hydrogen bond. What is hydrogen bond? Hydrogen bond is the interaction between hydrogen in one side and some negative charge molecule like nitrogen, oxygen or sulfur on the another side. So there will be attraction not like the covalent but weak interactions, but that is very important in biological life. Then among other there is electrostatic interactions and van der Waals forces. Here it is not written. The van der Waals forces is also very much important, where all molecules interact with each other. When they comes near the square root of the diameter, they distract each other. So the water serves as a medium which makes every molecule come near to each other, and every molecule has an attraction to each other. So first I will explain about the hydrophobic effect. Next please. Here see, this is a picture. Here you can find the structure of water. Graphically, this structure of water you can see is a type of molecule where you have a charge which is distributed toward ends of the particular molecule. On the one hand it is oxygen and another hand two hydrogen. So the charge is distributed as delta positive and delta negative in its two pole, and this type of molecule is known as bipolar. Whereas there are certain molecules which are not bipolar. Like in the example here, the methyl or ethyl group, which is a non-polar. There is charge is not distributed, this charge is uniform. Now find water is distributed all through your cells, and within the cells some non-polar groups are dispersed. Like here in the example, this is the water structure. Water has three forms, that is ice, then the liquid water and the gaseous form. Now in a liquid water you have every molecule of water is interacted with each other, and these positive and negative ends are attracted by the hydrogen bond. Now this is a liquid form. In the most solid form, what happens? All the bonds are satisfied. No water molecule is free, everything is attracted to each other, and that gives you the shape. So that will be ice. When some temperature is given, like in the room temperature, it becomes liquid. And if you get more heat, all the hydrogen bonds will break and the water will behave as gas. So in a liquid state, the water has its own structure. Some of the hydrogen bonds may be not satisfied, but most of the hydrogen bonds are satisfied, and they have a particular water structure. Now you disperse certain non-polar molecule into that water structure. Like this is a non-polar molecule. Now what happens to this molecule? The water can only react with some polar molecules, like Na plus Cl. When dissolved in water, what happens? Na is ionized as Na plus and Cl minus. So Na plus, that means they have a huge positive charge. All the negative poles of the water will go there, and so a sodium ion can attract many hydrogen and many water molecules. Like Cl also, some of the positive ends of the water molecule percolate through the Cl, though Cl has less charge. Potassium also have similar, but not like sodium. And this way, a polar molecules always percolated or dissolved in a water. But in case of non-polar molecule, it cannot be dissolved, it cannot be interacted. So what happens? This molecule has a tendency to avoid the water molecule. That is, it is have a phobia to the water molecule. And similarly, another molecule, if you disperse, it has the same effect. It is also having a phobia to avoid the water molecule. So enemy is a friend, and that's why these two molecules, as they cannot interact with the water molecule, they will be interacted to each other because of the indirect pressure of the water structure. And that is known as hydrophobic interactions. That is a very, very important way of interacting the water molecules. That is given the membrane lipids are formed, lipid bilayer, by this hydrophobic interaction first. When it starts, amino acid build up a protein, this hydrophobic interaction automatically works in the different non-polar groups of the different amino acids, which makes them come close to each other. I'll show you. So this is a hydrophobic interaction which is very, very important in a organization of the biomolecular structure. So water environment helps in formation and organization of biomolecules. With example, next please. Now first of all, I just give you certain groups which are polar and non-polar. Now here is certain examples. The polar groups like hydroxyl group is a polar group. Sulfide group is a polar group. But there are some carboxyl group is a polar group because it is ionized to COO minus H plus. Amino group, that is also a polar group. Phosphoryl group, it's a polar group. Here is a non-polar group, methyl group, ethyl group, phenyl group. So they are present in different amino acids. Hydroxyl group containing amino acid, phenyl group containing amino acid, ethyl group, methyl group containing amino acids, accordingly they are named. So we will see how protein is built up, first initiated by the hydrophobic interaction. Next. So here is the example. This is the lipid bilayer. This is the polar end of the amphibitic lipid. You will learn more in the chemistry classes of about the lipids. So amphibitic lipids have a polar as well as non-polar end. This non-polar end interact with another non-polar group because whole thing is submerged. Outside there is water, inside there is water. So the polar groups interact with the water, but the non-polar group interacted to each other. So this way the biomolecular membrane can be formed. That's way cell can be given a special environment. That is the very important, and thereafter other force of attraction definitely work, but that is the initiation. Next, you will learn more in the chemistry classes. Here is the example of how amino acids are built, proteins are built from the amino acids. Now amino acids these are the amino acids linked to each other by peptide bond. This is the covalent bond, and this is a linear structure. Now linear structure cannot serve as a protein. So that has to be folded properly and give rise to a three-dimensional structure like this. So amino acid linear to the secondary organization, that is the primary organization, then the secondary organization where there is a folding, spring-like or beta sheet-like bending. And this one amino acid comes to each other. Why? Why this amino acid comes to this? Because there are two non-polar groups of amino acids which indirectly pressurized by the water structure to come close to each other. And that is the shape, and that's why the sequence actually helps in bending and folding. And that's why the first primary to secondary and secondary to ultimately tertiary structure forms that you will learn more detail in your chemistry classes of protein and amino acid. So I am just giving you some examples of the importance of water here. And thereafter other structures like hydrogen bonding, they also stabilize the structure. Thereafter I have Van der Waals forces, they also helps in stabilizing. The ionic interaction, that also helps in stabilizing those structures. So different covalent as well as non-covalent interaction helps in organization of the biomolecular structure and their interaction, that means reactions. And that is possible only because the polar environment is there by water. So water is that way very important. Without water, life is not sustained. Next please. So this is the example how amino acids are built up into protein. I'll be discussing more in the classes when we are going through that structure of protein. So here the same primary to secondary and secondary to tertiary, tertiary to quaternary. These are all done because of the assembly, then folding, then packing and then interaction. So this structure is stabilized by the different covalent as well as non-covalent bonds. Next please. So now we can understand how biomolecule structures are organized. So that I have discussed in the first classes that molecules like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, etc. form groups that may be non-covalent or covalent groups. Then different groups, polar or non-polar, interact with each other to form simple biomolecules like amino acids, like lipids, and then simple biomolecules interact among themselves to form larger biomolecules like protein, like carbohydrates, and then polysaccharides. Then these larger biomolecules also combine to each other. So complex biomolecules are formed, and this complex biomolecular organization ultimately gives rise to subcellular organelles, and they ultimately combine to form the cell. So water plays very important role in formation and organization of these biomolecules. As I have told you earlier, by polar and non-polar groups interactions by the way of formation of hydrophobic and also hydrogen bond, as well as the ionic interactions and the van der Waals forces, and also the main structure by the covalent bond like peptide bond, glycosidic bond. And maintenance of pH and electrolyte balance and other way by giving rise to high dielectric constant, it helps as a universal solvent. So also it helps in the cell transport. So that is the importance of the water in a nutshell. You learn more and more when you go through your classes. Next. Now lastly of all, I have just mentioning here one important aspect, that is the configuration and conformation. Now as we are telling about the bonds, there are two types of bonds that you have clearly understood. Is the covalent bond as a non-covalent interactions. Really it is called as a bond. Now force of interaction between the covalent and non-covalent is different. You require more energy to break a covalent bond, but very less energy to break a non-covalent bond. So when there is a breakage and rebuilding of a covalent bond, you get different configuration. You will find it more in the stereoisomerism when you learn the stereoisomerism of carbohydrate. Simply, if you just have your image in front of a mirror, you have a mirror image. That means when you are seeing your right hand on the right side, in the mirror you will find your right hand on the left side. That is the enantiomers, we call it. And this enantiomers is nothing but a change in the configuration. That means the same thing if you imagine in the original structure, that you have to break your shoulder major joints and then replace it, which is known as the change in the configuration. But if you have just have this configuration and then also you have this configuration, the twisting and opening of your hands, these are the change or change in the smaller joints. That means the weaker interactions. So these are known as the change in the conformation. That is the simple concept, and that you require to understand the structure and functions of different biomolecules. That I will tell you. The hemoglobin functioning requires the change in the conformation. So with this, I just give you the concept of the importance of water, and will be going through further classes to learn about the different biomolecules and also about their roles in our biological life. Thank you all for sound listening.